Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Miles, host of the S.O.S. and Shoutouts show. Hope you're having a tremendous Tuesday. And if not, still a little bit of time, it might get better. So let me welcome everybody to the Shoutouts show. We're here on location at Duck Spot, putting in a little voice work. I want to thank everybody that's been sending emails and texts and hit me up on Instagram and the DMs. Some of your ideas are really, I want to say really real robust ideas. And, hopefully moving forward, we'll be able to talk about some of the concepts. I'm going to be talking about one today, a topic that's not really spoken about often, not enough, but it's a very virulent topic that affects a lot of communities of color. And I'll be getting to that for a moment, but let me give my normal disclaimer. If you're here for the show for the first time, relax. You're amongst family, you're amongst friends. What I mean is, this is a platform that has an eclectic group of people. They have great ideas, they have great spirit. And you know what, man? They're just family. So you are amongst family. And what that means is, get in when you fit in. I'm saying don't be a wallflower. If you have something to say it. Get in the comment section and let us know what you think. And also get in the comment section on the sake and the side of community and let us know who you are, where you're from, what you're thinking, okay? And when you do that, guess what you're going to do? You're going to get a shout out. That's what we call it here. That's why it's called the shout out show. So right now, if you don't mind, I'm going to give some shout outs to people. And if you're here for the first time, please click the subscribe button, notification button, whatever those buttons are, click them. So let me get into my shout outs. Shout out family, Sister Ree. I think she's back from Bryant, Texas. I'm not sure. I hope she is. I hope you got back safely. Big up to you and Derek. They were doing some charity work, compassion work, supporting a friend who just lost her mom. May Allah be pleased with you for that. Thank you so much. And she's also our craft services director. You don't want to miss her. And my little brother, JT Johnny L. Thomas. I know you hit me up this morning talking about DC statehood. It's a larger conversation, but we're having a conversation. It's a great topic, as a matter of fact, little brother. I think I'm going to explore that one just a little bit more, particularly growing up in Washington, D.C. and understanding the lack of representation. They say no taxation without representation. That's been D.C. for a number of years. A lot of people don't realize that D.C. was really defined early on as a southern town that was really policed by a lot of authorities or law enforcement people who sought law enforcement jobs in D.C. from West Virginia. So it was always actually thought of as a southern town, believe it or not. All right. My main man, Altaf Rashid, coming to us again from Toronto. You rep Toronto hard, my brother. You rep Canada hard. And I'm going to tell you something. If I go anywhere in the country of Toronto, you know what I'm saying? Do you know Altaf Rashid? And I'm gonna be in the most obscure place in Toronto. They're like, the dude that's on the shout out show? Yeah. I mess with you, brother. He comes here no passport. He doesn't worry about immigration. He comes on time. My brother and yours. Big ups to Altaf Rashid. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, brother. Next up, and that's brother Derek Chase, the husband of Sister Reed. You know, we got to give the family a little bit. All right. Ooh, take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Ree, I tell you got to take care of yourself. Remember, this is what Muslims say. Your body has rights. And your body definitely has rights because you're extending yourself. But I just want to make sure you're okay. Sister Ravina Chaudhry, all the way from the UK, who's tuning in, brothers and sisters. It's about 11 o'clock her time, 5 after 11. She's tuning in to give us support. I've seen some of the things you were cooking. What was that thing you cooked with the orange peel? And I can't remember what it was. It looked delicious. Very, and you had the bread and stuff like that. I was watching it on Instagram. Very tasty. I didn't get to taste it, but it looked tasty. Meaning, if I had some money and had to buy it, I had to make a decision between that and the Snickers bar. I'm gonna eat yours, but I'm still gonna get the Snickers bar, because I got a sugar addiction. Thank you so much for being on the show, Sister Rabina, who's our official, unofficial research director. And we have Sister Aika all the way from Indonesia, not Jakarta, but Depok. Thank you so much for coming on the show, sister. We appreciate your participation and your support. Next up, we have, of course, she's not in the box anymore. Why? Because she's running the back end. That would be Sister Sultana Whitfield, our consultant producer, who has jumped in feet first, hand first, and has been blessing us with flawless production, making sure that the banners go up, the shout outs go up, the intro, the outro. She's just loosening this whole thing up for me to do what I do, which is talk to you. So I appreciate you, Sister Sultana. If I don't mention it, it's because, and that's what they say. Sometimes you don't mention people because they're doing a job so well, they make you think they're not even there. So you're doing your job, because I've forgotten a couple times. But we want to give you a shout out, Sister Satana, and be looking for her show soon, brothers and sisters. I think that she is on her way. Okay, let's get to our topic today. Our topic today is destroying black families, the crimes of child support enforcement laws. Let me say this again. Destroying black families, the crimes of child support enforcement laws. I came across something on Instagram several days ago. It was a post that was going around, and it was a post of a man who literally was being called into court to pay child support for a child that wasn't his. Let me say it again. He was being brought into court, being forced to pay child support for a child that wasn't his. When I say a child that wasn't his, I'm not saying it's from his mouth. It's from DNA testing that shows that whoever this baby is, it's not his child. Now, this is nothing new. It's nothing new. But I found that the detrimental aspects, it's being done to the detriment of black families, in particular Latino families as well. But it's been an exercise that's been in place for brothers and sisters, because you now have something that has, I want to say, judicial preference or inference over how you raise your family. Now, we all know in relationships, sometimes they don't work out. They say marriages aren't made in heaven, they're made between men and women. I believe that. And all relationships are not going to work out. We may work to the best of our ability, but sometimes it's just not meant to be. I understand that. I also say the fact that if men, if you father a child, you should take care of your child. That goes without saying. And sisters, that brother should be held accountable. You should be held accountable, because the child has no responsibility for being here. We have to, whatever our differences are, we have to get together and take care of the child. That said, this mechanism, which is called child support, which is a mechanism that's not really about child support. It's about child support. The Child Support Enforcement Agency has created a process, if you will, has made a process, if you will, whereby you can't do that. To be a father takes a price. To take care of your children has a numerical imperative that you must follow. Now, I start out the show by saying, brothers and sisters, that it was a story of a man, and I'm going to say this man was genuinely upset. He was genuinely upset. He was scared. He was intimidated going into court, and they were planning to arrest him. He was facing a judge who had intentions to arrest him. All praise to Allah. The guy got a decent attorney, which doesn't always happen in child support cases. Got a decent attorney who explained in some way, shape, or form, hey, Your Honor, we're here on a child support case, but the child is not his. And even then, the case wasn't dismissed. It was moved down the line. Let me continue. I've done a little bit of research, and this thing has never, this is not a new thing. I have members of my family who went through the same thing, who paid for 16, 17 years of a child's life, and the child wound up not being theirs. They couldn't get their money back. They couldn't get their respect back. And of course, it's damaging on a lot of levels. I'm not saying that this particular member of my family, didn't love that child, didn't support that child, of course, because in your heart, that's what it is. You're trying to do the right thing. But when people are making you do what you think is the right thing, when they are twisting laws and putting you in a situation of disadvantage because A, you don't know the law, B, not knowing law, you can't fight the law. Therein lies the problem, brothers and sisters. And therein lies, now they are destroying black families. Let me tell you the hardship of a black family. And then I'm going to run this tape. The hardship of a black family is that a black family comes into hardship and comes into trauma anyway. And it's not the trauma of somebody beating you down. It's the trauma of looking at your relatives, understanding that you've been through a process. You've been through a process that was traumatic. You've been through a process that somehow scarred your heart. You've been through a process whereby you weren't the culprit, if you will. You weren't the initiator of this process. This wasn't due process. This is something that's repeated over and over and over again. And I like to say oftentimes, if you really want to understand abuse, abuse is cyclical. And one of the places where it's most prevalent is in our laws and in our court system. Saying that, we talk about, of course, criminal law. But what about family law? What about the laws that decide whether the father can stay with a family or support the family? And even more so, the ability for the courts to intercede about how you raise your children. I'm going to play this for you, and I'm going to be right back, okay? Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Working parents who are paying child support frequently lose over 60% of their paycheck to the state. If the court is not satisfied with the money they are able to submit, they can be found in contempt and jailed.
When I got released, I got a job at McDonald's, and I really wasn't making enough to meet child support requirements. I went from there to Piggly Wiggly, and I started working there, making $7.25 an hour. My first check at Piggly Wiggly, I brought home like $500. After child support took out, my check was like $163. And by the time I got to the house to give my mom or whatnot a bill, I don't have no money to do nothing to take care of my kids or to pay bills to meet my needs, my personal needs.
One time I went to court, I told them I had the money to pay on my child support, but I had rent, light, and my children need something to eat. And they told me that wasn't a concern. Every time you go to the court, 9 out of 10, you're going to get locked up if you ain't got the money or a job.
The case most telling of the failures of the child support system is that of Mr. Frank Hatley.
Mr. Hatley had been jailed in Adel, Georgia for about a year and a half because he failed to pay child support, even though Mr. Hatley does not, in fact, have any children.
In 2000, Judge Dane Perkins and the Assistant Attorney General presiding over child support hearings were given conclusive DNA evidence that Mr. Hatley was not the father of the child in question.
I was just labeled as a deadbeat dad, and they was gonna get that money out of me regardless, even though they know that the DNA test had proved that wasn't my child. But by me not having to afford a real lawyer, I couldn't win because I couldn't afford a real lawyer to represent me. So they kept just abusing me. You better pay this and you better pay that. And I didn't have no rights.
After he lost his job and became homeless, living out of his car, Mr. Hatley continued to pay with his unemployment check. Despite his efforts and the DNA evidence, Judge Perkins and the Assistant Attorney General re-incarcerated Mr. Hatley. This time he served 13 months.
One day seemed like 1,000 years. You just don't know when you're gonna get out. Don't know when you're going to court. Your life is a total mess when you locked up for child support. My life still messed up. But you can't get back that time.
Thoughts? Ideas? It's scary. I don't know exactly where Adel, Georgia is. But Adel, Georgia is not alone. This happens in Adel, Georgia. This happens in Chicago, Milwaukee, DC. You have generations of people. And I thought it was really important, brothers and sisters, to show the young woman, the young black woman, because a lot of times this whole idea of the child support enforcement agency is that they collect money from people under the guise of we're going to settle how much you should be putting into the support of your child. Let me say this. They don't meet the child. They really don't meet the dad. There's no conversation with the family. They use an arbitrary algorithm, if you will, to come up with the amount for the child. It could be some exorbitant amount, but you're going to have to pay it as a part of the legal process. And if you really want to get the child support reduced, you have to go back to court. This is irrespective of the fact that it could be, brothers and sisters, that a man and a woman, a father and mother, could actually sit down and talk about the needs of the child in a very civil way. But the court system has motives. The court system has motives, and it has motives that have nothing to do about the welfare of the child. It has to do about the mobility and ability of a family to grow. You've created two dependents. And I say two dependents because the Child Support Enforcement Agency is like a dealer. They deal dope, but it's a different kind of dope. They deal mobility to your family. You know, I've heard of some cases of guys that went and they had to pay $150, $175 for a child. And I'm like, that's not enough. Then there's guys who, you know, they pay something for their child anyway, and then they got to pay something on top of it. And the whole thing is just very, very arbitrary. But one thing that's not arbitrary, one thing that you can't overlook, is that the welfare of the child is not taken into consideration. This whole thing. In America, family court is set up for worst case scenarios. The Child Support Enforcement Agency is set up for worst case scenarios. What do I mean by that? Well, literally, the Child Support Enforcement Agency is an arm of the welfare agency. And the whole idea of not being able to pay goes back to something where you may have, if you listen, you know, the man with the unemployment, you know, who he's paying out of his unemployment check for a child that he didn't have, despite DNA evidence. What I've showed you, brothers and sisters, and what I'm going to refer to, these are the invisible victims of the Child Support Enforcement Agency. The constant and continuum scope of how families are handicapped. Because what you're seeing is people who can't get out of a hole. I can't have a job if I'm giving, like the woman said, she made $500. Her check was $133. If I'm giving almost 75% of my check to this enforcement agency, she's like, I have nothing to give to my child. That check that she's giving, it doesn't go to the child. It goes to support and basically have them reimburse the welfare system. You know, a good friend of mine, years ago, when teenagers, got a girl pregnant. Now, this is before DNA and things like that. Well, the woman who got pregnant, you know, she's a young girl, didn't have a lot of money. But when they went to court, there was some debate about whether he was the father or not. I'm going to keep it real. There were several candidates that could have been father. But what I remember specifically is because they were youths, you know, 16, 17 years old, they didn't have any real income. What I remember specifically is they looked at the income of the parents. And my dear friend's parent had the best profile in terms of income. He was making really good money. And the social worker is basically, you spread out, the social financial statements are spread out on the table. And the social worker goes, let's take that one. Hear me now, let's take that one. No blood tests, of course, no DNA back then. But from that point on, he was responsible for that child. If people can do that and legally get away with it, what else can they legally get away with? This is a pathway to family prison. If we can't lock you up the other way, we're going to lock you up this way. How can you do 13 months in jail knowing that you're not going to earn the money then. But why should you have to worry about earning the money? It's not even your child. To again get out of jail, be summoned, they're going to ask you if you have the money. It's like a bad algorithm, a bad dream. It's like Groundhog Day. He's going to go all the way back, come back to the situation. Do you have the money? No. Go back to jail, come back. Do you have the money? No. Look at what I'm doing. It's cyclical. Abuse is cyclical. And at this point in time, brothers and sisters, imagine if he did have a family. Imagine if he did have employment. You know, you just can't not show up to work for 13 months and your boss is going to understand. And even more importantly, that shows up on your record. So even when you go to, interview for a job, that's going to be on your record. And you're going to literally, and I know how the system is. They're going to say, tell us what happened. And you're going to say, well, I got locked up for 13 months for child support, but the baby's not mine. They're going to go, sure, the baby's not yours. We'll call you when we're ready. They never call. And brothers and sisters, you create a tradition. You create a tradition, even more so. You create a class of people, a rendering of people who are subject to these laws. We don't talk about this enough, but we should. It is the invasion on the ability to take care of your children. Now, brothers and sisters, everybody knows this. Raising children is not cheap. Raising children is not cheap. If you're poor, it's even more expensive. My point is, instead of giving them a hand up, we're pushing these people down more and more and more and more. And I'm not going to say these people. These are my people. Because the woman who was working for her child, she went and got a job at Piggly Wiggly. She went and got a job. And the other guy, he was working. And the thing that you don't hear, there's no empathy. There's no compassion. It's scary when people get really, really pragmatic about life and death issues. The young man who was sitting over by that body of water said, well, the court said, well, that's not our issue. It's funny. Very, very funny how people throw that out. They want to uphold the law when it's to their advantage. And you start thinking about these things, brothers and sisters, even more so. The amount of confusion that it causes, the amount of bad feeling, dissension that it causes in the family. Because there are families that could probably be together right now, but they're not because of the money. Because this person says, well, you're supposed to be sending the money to them, and then they send it to me. And then they say, well, you know what? You're not sending it to them. That's why I'm not getting it. And the only recourse is to go back to the court and go, I'm not getting it. And then it sets this man, most likely, in most cases, sets this man up to be in legal trouble. There was a part of the interview with the guy with the dreads. They said that the police told him to come on in. And what they tell him, they said, bring your toothbrush. Bring your toothbrush. The reason they said bring your toothbrush is you're going to be there for a while. You're going to be incarcerated. The worst stink that you ever have to wash off of you is jail stink or prison stink. Because that odor offends people. It offends people. It doesn't make people ask what happened. Give me your account of it. It's a stench that feels almost like a bad perfume. And here we have it affecting our families. There are families right now in America right now. Their recourse to family resolution, resolving conflict, is to go to the court. The same people that just gave you that situation scenario that I showed you in that clip. It's hard enough to raise children. And some of us, you're raising nieces and cousins and grandchildren and nephews. It's hard enough to do that. But it's even more difficult when you have a system that's very arbitrary that restricts your ability to do that. It subsumes that you're not going to do your job and take care of your child. That's what it says. It says, we don't believe that you're going to do it. And even more so, it creates a scenario and a narrative, particularly with young black women, that young black man is not responsible. That Latino man is not responsible. We can make him responsible. We can make him pay. But here's what the child support agency can't do for a father or a mother in that case. You can't make us love our kids. You may have some power, but you can't make us love our kids. You can't frame how we love our kids. You can't frame how we discipline our kids or how we rear our kids. But you try. You try. The idea of money is one thing, but the idea of law as a way to get the money, but also control people's family and how you raise children. This has been going on for years. These stories are light nightmares. I know guys who've been locked up year and a half. What's happening? And they call, where you at? Man, I'm in jail. What are you doing in jail? And they say, man, I ain't paying my child support. I've literally had brothers call me from underneath their beds in their bedrooms, hiding because the marshal is at the door to come take them to jail. Why? Because they didn't pay their child support. You see, the child support agency subsumes that, their money should be given to them, and that's the best case scenario. It has no space for, I don't know, a missed paycheck, illness, loss of work. It doesn't have that. It's a perfect algorithm that only works for them. And I'm saying that because I'm seeing the difference. I'm seeing that fathers are not being able to spend time with their sons because you have a money issue that's been legislated and orchestrated to make sure that you're going to look like a deadbeat dad or you're going to look like a deadbeat mom. And all of the trappings are there to make sure that you don't make money. Everybody knows when you go to jail, you don't make money. Or when you go to prison, you don't make money. Or check this out. When you don't go to work, you don't make money. I really want to think that this is something out of the playbook of the 13th Amendment. I said it, I'm going to say it again. We talk about prison. I think this is the family rendition of it. This is I'm going to create a situation where you're a vagrant. See, the 13th Amendment said, basically, if you didn't have work, if you didn't have a job back in the day, and most of the jobs were from, the slave owners you just left. So to work for them, you're basically going back to being a slave because there was no impetus for entrepreneurship, of course. But if you're not working and being, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. If you're not being exploited, if you will, by this system, then, and you're just out there, then you're property of the state and they can take you to jail and make you work. This is the family rendition of it. The Child Support Enforcement Agency basically does the same thing. And it does something that's very diabolical, extremely diabolical. It creates a narrative whereby you can't be a parent. You can't be a parent. And guess what? You can't be present. Because children know when mommy and daddy are totally inspired and engaged with them. And this is, there's some fathers who, they never wind up going to jail, they pay child support, but it's that thing, that space that creates disharmony. It creates disunion, if you will. And the courts start telling you when you can see your child, when you cannot see your child, not this weekend, but this weekend, and da-da-da. And it's such, it's so unorganic that it affects kids. So listen, I got to go. You guys have been great. I hope you appreciated the topic today. If you get a chance, type in Google, men who have to pay child support for children who aren't theirs, or women who have to pay child support. And look at the color of the people. Look at the scenario of the people. Look at the economics of the people and where they live and how they're treated. So listen, I'm Preacher Moss. Let me give a shout out to our sponsor. Our sponsor, again, BeFinancialIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinancialIndependent.com. If you don't want to go to the website, you can call 1-800-679-3175. Again, that's 1-800-679-3175. Brothers and sisters, I appreciate you, and we will see you tomorrow, inshallah. Until then, have a blessed evening. This is Preacher Moss, the Shoutout Show. Take us out, Sultana. Hey, everybody, this is your brother, Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your Shoutout Show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next Shoutout Show. A simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from Tarifatar. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out Tarifatar.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.